Good afternoon, everybody. Or should I say good evening? We're gonna jump right into this. We're not gonna waste any time. Uh, the defense for Carmelo Anthony has rested. They all have rested. And, we're about to see and react to what happened during these closing arguments and what's gonna be the fate, or at least what I think will be the fate for Carmelo. Let's get into it.
Walk us through one of these final witnesses and what they mean for the defense in this case.
Yeah, again, three witnesses here, Chris. The police officer was really short. It was only 10 or 15 minutes. And the point that he pretty much made is that it is not illegal to carry a 5.5 or below a 5.5 inch blade knife into a stadium. While it might be, against school policy, it's not criminally illegal. The blade has to be less than 5.5 inches, though. So he pointed that out, and that was pretty much the crux of his testimony. But
So point one, right? Everybody's been saying, why did he bring a knife to school? Why would he bring a knife to a track meet to school? And it's illegal and under Texas Penal Code, blah, blah. Well, guess what? It's not illegal to bring a 3-inch knife to school. It may be against their school policy, but by the law, it is not illegal. So for everyone that kept saying this, shut up, nigga.
one of the witnesses today, Chris, one of those athletes who was there, was testifying, of course, about the rain. Everything we've heard about this rain, and as part of the defense narrative as to why Carmelo was under that tent, trying to get out of the rain, which makes sense. He talked about when.
Point two, trying to get out of the rain. Once again, oh, why was he over there? You're not supposed to be in the other team's tent. And well, guess what? It was raining, bro. The nigga needed to stay dry. The nigga needed to stay dry. What the fuck? And he wasn't even by himself. He was with 2, 3 other people, bro. Like, y'all just be saying shit. Talking about, oh, he went over there to go provoke. But yeah, he's over there with dude and them. Come on, bro.
The rain started, him, Carmelo, and like 2 or 3 other students went to the dugout, a baseball dugout that's right behind the stadium to get out of the rain. He said they were only there for a few minutes before a coach came and told them they couldn't hang out there. And then as they were walking back from the dugout, this student says that his coach, he was on the 4x1 relay, told them to start warming up. And so they all go there, him, Carmelo, and everybody else go down to the field to start warming up. And he says, they're doing their thing, stretching out, running up and down the tracks, just warming their legs up and everything. And then he says he sees Carmelo go up into the stands. And, him and Carmelo, like, he knows him. He's known him for a while. That's, his friend on the track team, a teammate. And then he says he's out there warming up and he starts hearing some sort of commotion under the memorial tent. And so he says, he's not quite sure what was going on. Was it, people that knew each other horsing around? Was it, a fight about to break out? He just wasn't sure, but it was loud enough and enough commotion to be concerned. And then he eventually saw Carmelo, and he described it as, sort of being kind of surrounded in his initial police report, his police interrogation, the answers he gave police once this happened. He described it as Carmelo as being surrounded.
As Carmelo being surrounded. But I thought he went over there and just stabbed Metcalf. I thought he went over there and just provoked, and that's it. And everyone just asked him to leave. Why is everyone surrounding him then? And they already said on the video that's what they see. A whole bunch of people, and then they start scattering, okay? So there was a group, and they were all surrounding this nigga, okay?
So he walks us through how he was walking towards the bleachers from the grass, about the 40-yard line he said he was on, towards the bleachers, just to see what was going on. He's turning back to see if his teammates are realizing what's going on. And then he sees, a bunch of students scatter. That was his testimony. And that was, of course, the moment that the stabbing happened. Now, under cross-examination, the prosecutor hopped up and showed that surveillance video yet again. And he kind of challenged what the kid was saying. The surveillance video had all kinds of angles. We have the angle on what happened, and then we have the angle that we actually saw of where this kid was on the field warming up. And they're playing the video, and it gets to the point, and the prosecutor literally goes, boom, this is the stabbing right here, and then he paused it. And then it shows the kid and another collection of runners not walking towards the stadium. So pretty much challenging what the kid had said. And then he talked about how he had interviewed the kid, weeks before pre-trial. And he said when he showed him that video, the kid agrees that, some of his accounts didn't line up. Some of them were just plain wrong. And the kid agreed to that on the stand. So that was very interesting. And then, of course, on redirect,
Damn. Yeah. That's pretty bad for the defense for sure. The witness already admitted that, some of his events are already faulty. Not reliable, But it still calls into question and lines up with what the video shows and what people said happened in the video. So
defense comes back and says, well, if I told you that, the timestamps of these two angles of the video didn't match up, you would have, no idea of that. And the kid obviously, agreed to that. He's like, I don't know about the timestamps, but that came up earlier in the trial because they said the syncs were off a few seconds. So that's something that the jury's going to have to weigh here, Chris. But, that was the most powerful moment to me today, as far as this student testifying his account, the prosecutor, challenging that account, but then the defense coming back and being like, well, this might be a couple of seconds off anyway.
Yeah, and you go back to that video because it's surveillance video, right, from kind of perched up on the top of the stands of this football stadium. I know you've seen it. It hasn't been released to the public. And it like at the time that it was presented, which I think was on the first day of this trial by the state, like we were talking about it not being the most like compelling video because you don't really see a lot. But here we are so many days later, and that is something that for someone who could be a very important witness to the defense, prosecutors were able to pull that.
So this is another thing to point out too is, all the people that were saying, there's another video where you could see everything clear as day and blah, blah, blah. If that was true, why aren't they using that video for the prosecution? You know what I'm saying? And if that's, I don't know. Now, that's not to say that they didn't surround him and all these things didn't happen, because that's what it still sounds like, even from Hunter Metcalf's last year's interview. But this whole idea with this video thing, I'm not so sure about it anymore. But it still could be true. But until I actually get some real evidence, yeah, it's in the air.
That video up once again that the jury's already familiar with, and actually point this witness out and say, and they're arguing that he actually maybe didn't see things the way that he thought he did.
Absolutely. And to your point, Chris, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the video. It looks very grainy, like a gas station video, because it's very wide angle. And when you zoom in, you're going to lose quality. You can kind of make out what's going on, but it still is not the best quality video to be presenting. But at the same time, there are identifiable characters that the prosecution has made very known that they have talked about this weeks before this trial. So they've walked through, this student understood, and not only this student, but other students as well, have walked through the key players. And then we have the forensic video analyst on the first day that...
Notice it says key players, right? So we already know there's multiple people involved in this. Again, like I said, this is why I'm saying the idea that Anthony was surrounded isn't far-fetched at all. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm just super defending Anthony, because I'm not. I think that he should be held accountable for his actions, because at the end of the day, yes, it's not illegal to bring a knife to school. Okay? Yes, if someone did jump him, or, a bunch of people were trying to, jump him or anything like that, that's more justifiable. But at the end of the day, if this whole thing comes down to you and Austin, and that was the only two, brother, you gotta fight, man. So, is it first degree murder? No, but I still think that there should be some accountability held on his side. But at the end of the day, this case is so far-fetched in racism that shit is too late. So,
had the different characters spotlighted in the video. So they made sense of what was really going on. But yeah, you would imagine, Chris, it seems like the prosecution had a better relationship with one of the defense's witnesses. So it's a very interesting thing to see play out, and then have the defense case end this abruptly.
Yeah, and now they head into closing arguments, and you kind of step back and you think, like, what is the defense of this case? And like one of the questions that we've talked about, and it's come up a lot, is like, why does he have a knife at a track meet? And it seems like, just based off this police officer, and I believe the blade was 5.5 inches or more, then that would be a weapon you're not allowed to have. The blade in this situation, I think, was 3.5 inches. And it seems like just from this testimony that the argument about it's not necessarily like, oh, well, he had a blade at a track meet, and most people have said that they don't think that a blade should be at a track meet. It's more a question of, well, it's not really illegal to have it in his bag.
Yeah, that's the ultimate question. But the thing about it, Chris, and we talked about this previously, it was never addressed as to why it was there. I mean, they could have thrown out, maybe he liked to camp. Maybe he had a job outside of work to where, he lawfully had a knife on him. They did not even address that, which I thought was a major loss for the defense.
Yeah, so we're not gonna play the whole video because the rest of it's really just talking about after they finish resting and all that shit and what their opinions are about what the verdict will be and so on and so forth. But um, my opinion on this whole thing, right, is at the end of the day, the knife wasn't illegal to have. He could have it. Now, as to why he had the knife that specific day, I don't think matters. And because there's nothing in this case that proves premeditation. Okay, so he could have had the knife for days before this incident happened. It doesn't matter. It's not illegal. So at the end of the day, I think it's really irrelevant. But I still think that Anthony's defense, not really the best defense, man. Like I said, I still think he deserves to get some type of consequence, unless you're charged in first degree murder. But I still feel like there was a lot more that could have been said and done, and that just didn't happen, really, in this case. Yes, there was some good things that were said that kind of shift. I feel like there's still, how do I put this? I feel like the lawyer did a little to kind of bring up that reasonable doubt, but at the same time, it's still very, uh, you know, it's not that simple. Because at the end of the day, this case is going to come down to, in my opinion, from what I'm already hearing, now that we're at this stage, that this case is going to come down to basically what story is more believable, right? This is going to be just like the Rick Chow and Cyrus Carmack Belton situation, right? Where you don't really have good witnesses, right? The witnesses are all saying different things. They're not really the most reliable. And then you also have now surveillance, which is grainy. Like I said, it's raining. You can't really see much. So everything's going to be dependent on which sounds more believable. And that's what it's going to come down to. Y'all let me know in the comments below what y'all think, what's more believable at this stage in the case. I already know most people are going to say Anthony, jail. Texas, jail, slave, get him get him his trash bag and get that nigga in the field. But without being biased, let me know in the comments below what you think about this whole thing, man. How is this going to end? What is going to be the final verdict for Karmelo Anthony? Like, comment, and subscribe.